All right, today we're going to explore this really profound map of the mind. It's called the Stages of View, and you can think of it as a step-by-step guide, a way to look inward and start questioning the very nature of our reality. So yeah, let's dive in. So let's just start with maybe the most fundamental question there is. For a second, just forget your name, your job, all of your history. Who are you? Like, really? Who is that you at the very center of it all? That's the question we're going to dig into together, right down to the core.
Now, for most of us, the answer feels, well, obvious, right? There's this solid, continuous me at the center of everything. An I that was here yesterday, is here now, and will be here tomorrow. It feels like the one constant thing in a world that's always changing. But what if that feeling is just a really, really powerful assumption?
Okay, so our first stop on this journey is going to be a kind of logical investigation. Let's put on our detective hats for a minute and go searching for this solid self. I mean, if it really exists, we should be able to find it somewhere in our experience, right?
So the text we're looking at breaks down our whole moment-to-moment experience into these 5 big categories. They're sometimes called aggregates. You've got your physical body, your feelings, pleasure, pain, whatever. Then there are your thoughts and all the labels you put on things. After that, your mental habits, things like faith or shame, and finally, just your basic awareness through your senses. The idea is, if there's a permanent self, it has to be hiding in one of these categories. So, let's check.
Okay, first up, form. That's our body. And yeah, it seems pretty solid, doesn't it? But is it really? I mean, think about it. It's just a collection of parts, right? Arms, legs, organs, trillions of cells. And they're all changing, all the time. There isn't some single body thing that's separate from all its pieces. So the argument goes, it can't be that permanent singular self we're looking for. All right, what about feelings? The logic here is actually pretty powerful when you think it through. So if you were your pleasant feelings, what happens the moment you feel pain? Does your self just get destroyed? And if you were your painful feelings, well, the self would disappear as soon as you felt any pleasure. You see, they're constantly changing, flickering on and off. There's just no way they can be that stable, constant me we're trying to find. And it's pretty much the same deal for our thoughts and mental habits. Our thoughts, what we label as good or bad, they change like the weather. And our mental habits, they can be totally contradictory. You can feel faith one minute and doubt the next, or shame and pride at the same time. They're just not consistent enough to be some single, unchanging self. So after digging through all these building blocks of our experience, our body, feelings, thoughts, habits, our senses, we come up empty. We just can't seem to find a solid, independent I anywhere. The text's conclusion? Believing in this separate self is, at its root, a kind of fundamental confusion. All right, so if the self isn't found in any of its parts, what then? Well, maybe we've been looking at reality itself all wrong. This brings us to the next stage of our journey, and a really radical perspective from what's called the mind-only school. Okay, the core idea here is a big one. It asserts that everything we see, everything that appears to us as an external world, is actually a projection of our own mind. It's all colored by our past habits and conditioning. Now, this doesn't mean things don't exist at all. It just means the way they appear to us is a product of our own consciousness. And here's a great way to think about it. Imagine you're dreaming. From your body's perspective in the dream, getting shot with an arrow or showered with flowers, there's no real difference, right? It's not real. But from your mind's perspective, oh yeah, there is a huge difference. The fear or the joy feels totally 100% real. The idea here is that our waking life is a lot more like that dream than we think. All our happiness and all our suffering are experienced only by the mind. And you can see this in everyday life, right? To your enemy, your body looks like a threat. To a friend, it's a source of comfort. To a little insect, it's basically a mountain range. So, which one is the real you? They're all just perceptions, just projections. And think about it, when an enemy becomes a friend, they haven't fundamentally changed, but our mental projection of them has. And with it, our whole reality of that relationship shifts. Okay, but we're not done. We're about to go even deeper. The third stage of view is known as the middle way. And it challenges everything, not just the reality of external things, but the solid reality of the mind itself. And this is where we get to that famous and often misunderstood concept of emptiness. Now, this is super important. When we talk about emptiness, we do not mean nothingness. It's not a big black void. It's actually a very precise idea. It means that all phenomena,
a table, a thought, even the mind itself, are empty of a solid, independent, built-in essence. They don't exist all on their own. Instead, everything exists dependently, arising in relation to everything else. Just look at the logic here. It's so simple, but it's really profound. You can't have a concept of many things if you don't first have a concept of one. And you can't really have one without many to compare it to. They literally define each other. They depend on each other to even exist as concepts. And this interdependence is true for, well, everything. All phenomena are dependently existent.
So why does any of this matter? Well, because when we forget this interconnectedness, when we believe that these appearances are solid and real and permanent, that's when our suffering really ramps up. It's like being burned by a fire in a dream. The fire isn't real, but as long as you believe it is, the pain feels completely, totally real. It's our own grasping, our own confusion that causes the burn.
I know, this can all sound incredibly abstract, right? But the point of all this isn't just to have some cool philosophical ideas to bat around. This is meant to be a practical path, a way to actually transform our experience. So, the big question is, how do we do it? How do we put this into practice?
Well, the Mind-Only School lays out a pretty clear meditation practice. First, you work on realizing that the objects you see aren't really solid and separate and out there like they seem. Then you turn that same logic inward, and you realize that the mind doing the perceiving isn't solid either. And once you start to gain some real certainty in this reality that's empty of that subject-object split, the final instruction is beautiful in its simplicity. Settle naturally into that state. Don't force it. Just let go and relax. And the goal of the middle way practice is very much in the same spirit. When you truly know, and I mean not just as an idea, but as a real felt experience, that all phenomena, all thoughts, all emotions have no inherent solid nature, then you can just rest in that great open awareness. You're not so easily caught by the labels of good and bad, real or not real. Okay, so we've deconstructed the self. We've deconstructed reality. We've talked about the mind, about emptiness, about meditation. But what's the point? Why does any of this actually matter? This is the big so what question. And the answer is maybe the most important part of this whole teaching. Because here it is, the final instruction. The whole reason for doing this, for understanding the nature of reality. It isn't to float away into some abstract, disconnected state. It's to purify our own minds with great love and compassion. Why? So that we can actually be of benefit to all sentient beings. All of them, even our enemies. Because when you see through the illusion of a separate solid self, the whole barrier between me and you just starts to dissolve. And so that leaves us with a really big question to sit with. If the self is a concept, if reality is a projection, and if the boundaries we draw between ourselves and others are ultimately just made up, then what does it truly mean to help another person? What does compassion really look like? How does this kind of view shift the entire ground of how we relate to the world, and, more importantly, to each other?